keeping your children safe every time you hit the road is a priority, and now there's a new high-tech
50
device.
kilometers an hour or more. Children are especially at risk, and correct positioning of the child's safety seats is therefore
something that is really important to me is extended rear-facing car seats.
This video covers some of the basic steps on how to install a comfort sport convertible car seat, rear-facing and back.
Should stay in a rear-facing car seat until they are 2 years old.
Facing your child in a rear-facing car seat, how long you should do it, what are the benefits, and all that fun stuff.
Until they reach the maximum.
Highway Traffic Administration say baby Isla and others should remain in a rear-facing car seat longer to keep them safe.
In a rear-facing car seat.
Normally it's 1 year and 25.
Officer Kevin Older, a car seat safety instructor with Janesville Police Department, says these
The current UK law states that parents can change their children from a rear-facing car seat to a forward-facing car seat at the vulnerable age of 9 months. Even with the multitude of incidents that cause death to children every year due to being put forward-facing too soon, there has been no change. In this documentary, we aim to raise awareness on the topic of rear-facing seats in hope that in the future the current UK law can be changed to ensure the safety of our nation's children. Car seats have always been an issue for parents, from the high price to the fitting of these essential accessories. But one of the issues that is not commonly explored is whether or not our children are safest in a forward-facing or rear-facing position. In this documentary, we aim to explore the pros and cons of this issue and discover what will protect our children best. To explore this, we have spoken to several experts in this field of car safety.
Well, I've used car seats for my two children, and I've used a rear-facing seat when the child was between 0 and 1, I imagine, and then we went into a child seat that faced forward after that.
I've worked in the Metropolitan Police for 3 years, working in South London. Over my time I've dealt with quite a few different sort of road traffic accidents, road traffic collisions. A lot of them are sort of very minor, but a lot of them can be quite serious. Even on slow roads, sort of 30-40 mile an hour per hour roads. Often the most vulnerable people are children in those accidents. Obviously not as developed as adults, putting them at risk in cars, and that's why proper child restraints and seats in cars are so important.
And one of the things that I push in the new driver awareness sessions that we run is if you've got kids in the back of your car, as some young new drivers will have, it's very important to have them restrained correctly. Otherwise, if they do come out of the seat, they can be a danger to you and to them as well as themselves.
Currently, I believe it's only up to 9 months you have to have a rear-facing car seat for a child, whereas in a lot of other countries it's up to 4 years, which is much safer for the child. It's been proved in other countries, and in my experience, children are much more at risk, and they're the worst sort of traffic collisions to go to. The most common we have are sort of just car on car. Often that's where the children get hurt the most. But sometimes they can be victims on pedestrian crossings, but a lot of the time it is in the cars when they're not restrained properly. Under 14 years, it's up to the driver of the vehicle to be responsible to make sure they've got the proper restraints and the proper seatbelt on. And they can face a penalty fine if they don't have the correct restraint, or if they are in an accident, then they can face prosecution, and it gets worse from there. So.
The mechanisms of injury, or kinematics as it's otherwise known, and really that's all about how the energy involved in an accident actually is transferred through the car into the person, what happens to that person, the body in the car throughout the period of the accident. So when we're looking at kinematics, we're obviously looking at vehicles coming towards each other. You've got to just multiply the force of one vehicle coming towards the other, or a car going into a tree, or whatever it might be. And again, how that affects the person inside.
Well, I imagine that the impact's slightly different, and something to do with the way that the child moves in the chair and the way they're strapped in would make it a bit different, and make the impact less.
From my perspective as a kind of professional road safety officer, My understanding, my belief is that they're more effective. The same as if you travel in a train. If you crash on a train, it's better to be a rear-facing seat because your weight is actually held by the framework of the seat, as opposed to the belts and things like that.
There's a big distraction. If you think mobile phones are a distraction, having a toddler or a baby next to you is even bigger distraction. We tried in the rear seat, in the rear of the car, but then you actually have to start looking in the mirror and taking your eye off the road, so that's distracting. I just found them a massive distraction.
The babies, obviously, the muscles aren't there, they're on an adult, it's totally unprepared, it won't have seen a vehicle, it won't know what's going on, so we're totally relaxed. Bones in a baby aren't formed the same, they are more cartilage, they are softer, so there is more spring in them, but again, that can be a bad thing in a frontal collision or an accident, especially forward facing as we're talking about, because there will be more movement, so it's going to cause more damage. Whereas in a rear-facing car seat, of course, you won't get the same movement because the head won't be able to move back, and so you won't get the same movement through the C-spine or through the neck.
Looking at a lot of collisions, they cause neck injuries and whiplash. I mean, it's a sudden collision that the body's not prepared for, and a rear-facing child seat can only help support a young person's body, and can only probably help with the matter.
Every year, many car accidents take place at speeds of 50 kilometers an hour or more. Children are especially at risk, and correct positioning of the child's safety seats is therefore very important. We will now take a look at what happens if your child is sitting forward-facing in a frontal collision. If the child is sitting forward-facing in a frontal collision, this exerts huge forces on the shoulder and neck regions, as well as on the child's head. This can lead to death or permanent injuries as paralysis. If your child is sitting rear-facing during a collision, the force will be spread over a greater area of the body, and there'll be less pressure on the neck, head, and inner organs. If your child sits rear-facing instead of forward-facing, this reduces the risk of serious injuries and death by more than 90%. Children should therefore be seated rear-facing as long as possible, or until they are 4 years old.
I thought it was quite shocking, and I thought it was really interesting that on the market commercially at the minute there are only forward-facing seats really for children over 1. And it was very shocking to see the impact that it can have if they're forward-facing.
Yeah, having just watched the video, I think it really demonstrates how important it is and the difference it can make having a rear-facing child seat compared to a forward-facing child seat. You can show how serious an impact can be and the amount of force that's placed on a young child's body. I think the rear-facing, as shown in the video, is considerably safer and better.
According to the Swedish Standards Institute of Research, your child is 5 times safer in a rear-facing position when compared with forward-facing. This is due to the fact that 47% of our crashes occur from the front of the car. The benefits of keeping your child in a rear-facing position for as long as possible can be seen when you compare statistics on infant mortalities related to collisions between Germany and Sweden, where it is mandatory to keep your child rear-facing up to the age of 4. So why is this not the same in the UK?
People know that it is safer to be rear-facing. Why do you think the government aren't pursuing to push that?
Good question. I think with a lot of things that people hold dear, especially with safety, it's very hard to try and counter something that people hold dear. So if you try and come up with a counter argument, sometimes you either appear callous or you appear to be doing it for the wrong reason. So I think the governments tend to stay away from things like that. They tend to go to the sort of lowest common denominator and not try to get too panicky or make people worried, because if they made people worried about forward-facing seats, it might cause a panic or people might do the wrong thing in their cars.
Our law doesn't say that you can't have a rear-facing seat. It's got to be appropriate, it's got to meet the appropriate international standards. If that's okay, that's fine, it can be used. But it's just culturally we don't do that in this country. Same for if you travel in a coach or bus, it's much safer. Well, it's not much safer, but it is significantly safer to sit in the rear-facing seats, But culturally, we don't like to do that. We like to be seeing where we're going. But on the same with planes and things like that, whatever kind of transport you take, it's better, it's safer to be sitting on a rear-facing seat.
I don't think governments are necessarily scared. I just think they don't want to cause any unnecessary alarm with people. But if you were to cross that line and it would become acceptable that was the way to go, then it would be much easier for governments to do that. Yes. Yep.
Well, I think the issue can be made. You can raise awareness through maybe nurseries and through more sort of public safety, advertisements or that kind of thing. But for me, if there's not a replacement seat at a sort of accessible price that is rear-facing, then it's almost like scaring everybody, but not having anything to sort of support that and say, well, actually, here's a replacement product. Yeah.
Continental parents and some of the people from the States that I've met in Brighton and Hove are aware of the seats, and they do use them in their country, and they want to know where they can get them. And I have to say, I'm sorry, I looked at the internet. I have seen some on the internet, but I haven't seen them pushed anywhere else.
Realistically, unless you go to a specialist seller, you're not going to get a rear-facing car seat for the next level up, which is the sort of 1 year to 4 to 5 year old.
Yeah, I think we had a mother interviewing on Saturday who actually had to buy from Sweden, actually order it in, and it cost a lot more.
Yeah, and I've got to be honest with you, I was totally unaware till very recently that there was such a thing, or the idea behind the safety aspect. The Scandinavians have done so much research, the Swedish predominantly, into the safety aspects of the rear-facing. And had I known, my opinion would definitely be different, I think. But it's only going from what, they've had 40 years of studying, so that they must be fairly accurate with their results, I should think, by now.
I think some people probably are not as aware as they should be on the laws and the best possible safety for their child. I think some people are a bit unclear on it. I mean, there was only new rules in 2006, I believe, and maybe some people aren't as aware as they should be of how they need to restrain their child in a car.
I think if you had enough people and enough momentum to try and get governments to at least think about the issue, then you may get a result. Yeah.
There's no mandatory position which says that the child can't be in a rearward-facing seat, so I don't think the law needs to be changed. I think that the awareness needs to be encouraged of the benefits and cons of rear-facing seats, and the products need to be there. People in Brighton and Hove, quite a lot of them are from the continent, and I have discussions with them at various events where they've been saying, where can I get this kind of seat, this kind of child restraint, and we've looked and we can't see them in this country. You can get them on the internet, but not in mainstream stores.
Yeah, I think personally I would. I think as a fire service, obviously we're not going to start saying yes or no to anything like that, put the Fire and Rescue Service name to anything until there's certainly more, maybe even legislation come out. Because at the moment there's no legislation at all covering sort of one up on which way around the seat should be. So it is personal opinion, but yeah, I think I would happily do so, yeah.
Well, it convinced me that we should have rear-facing seats. The problem is convincing other people to have rear-facing seats. I think that's going to be the problem.
I think you probably need to target big manufacturers or importers to actually engage with them, or possibly Mumsnet or something like that, to actually promote awareness of it and to make sure that the product is there to meet the demand, and probably take some case studies as well.
I would, if they were a reasonable price. I think they'd have to be priced at a similar level as the normal seats, actually. I think if they're hundreds and hundreds of pounds, that's really off-putting for the general, man in the street, because it's a huge amount of money to outlay. And I think people will say, well, I've always used a forward-facing seat, so.
The research I've done in other countries, they had made travel safer for children having a rear-facing car seat. I mean, I think it supports their body better and makes them safer to travel in cars. I think it can only be a good thing if they are in a rear-facing child seat for as long as possible.